And we back, and we back. Yeah. Hey, this ain't no intro.
This is the intro.
Yeah, this is the intro.
This is the intro.
It's the entree. Hit that intro with Kanye. I sound like Andre. Tryna turn my baby mama to my fiance. She like music, she from Houston, like Auntie Beyonce. Man, my daughter couldn't have a better mother. If she ever...
So we're gonna continue this thread. Just you telling me about me.
Good morning, good afternoon,
good evening, and good night. No matter when you're listening, what's going on, family? How you doing? Welcome back. Look at us going back to weekly. Who knew? Who knew?
Being consistent.
Being consistent, doing big things.
You're so ridiculous.
How's everybody doing? How you doing? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing alright. Got some things to say. So
good
he
week
thinks
so
I had
far.
a gangster cookie this morning.
She did. She had a little gangster cookie for breakfast. She feeling strong today. She got some gumption in her. You know what I mean?
Listen.
A little bite in her system. She doing the head bob when she talk.
Well, when we were like going over what we're gonna cover this
today.
episode, he said some things, and it like was a little bit confronting to me. But I guess we can cover it.
It has some. It put a little fuel in the fire.
It did.
Okay, so this episode is going to be rough for a lot of people, and it's even a little rough for me.
And me.
And you. And that's because it's always a challenge to confront things about ourselves that maybe aren't healthy, maybe that we don't realize are true, or even, that we practice. And so today we're talking about internalized racism and self-hatred. And we're going to be talking about all the ways that this affects us as a people and all the different levels that it hits us on. And so for me, this is very personal. And so I'm going to start this out by saying we're going to talk a lot about Malcolm X in this, just because it's accurate. And the statement that I made, that I said was going to be in my opening, that set her off and made her angry, is
Not angry.
Anyway, one, I'm going to be talking a lot about Malcolm X. But two, no matter who you are, what your experiences are, what you go through, it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to do better. It's never too late to grow. I know what internalized racism looks like and what self-hatred looks like because I was a product of it for so many years. And so I say that because Malcolm X used to use drugs and be a thief, and then he became one of the greatest leaders,
One of the most influential
men, and one of the most quality people of his day and age in the world, who's still honored and revered. I used to be a hardcore Republican and dating white women and the whole nine, which is my statement which is something my wife judged me for a long time. And she doesn't feel as accurate and true. And what I told her in response was, I saw your face. I could see the faces that you would make. Because we both have very expressive faces that don't lie about what we feel and think. And so I used to see the disgust in her face when she would realize, like, oh, you used to really, like, fuck with white girls tough. Like, oh, you used to, like, believe these things.
What?
And I'd be like, damn, yes, like that is something I have to accept as a portion of my life and who I was, and having to grow beyond those things.
And yes.
But it's rough being judged for your past, but that's the reality. Something that I heard once is we spend our whole lives trying to outlive the wrong we've done. Yes, so yes, people will judge you for your past, whether they mean to or not, but it shouldn't stop you from growing. And it's also something that used properly can be a motivator to not become those things again and be mindful of those things. But you have a rebuttal?
No. Well, it's not necessarily a rebuttal, but I guess, I can see where you, like, looking back, how you could come to make that statement, like,
okay. But,
I can see it, and that's something I've had to learn, is to, like,
because that was almost mansplaining for a second there. I could see how you would wait, what did they say was not a real apology? Oh, I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yeah.
But
the reason it was so confronting at the time is because, you know, as a proud brown woman who has, because I had, I think I had Shoto at the time when, and like having black kids, black and brown kids, who I want them to be their full selves,
yes, and be
in
proud
all
of
their
themselves.
ways. It kind of was a little rough for me to be like, to think that,
oh, this nigga used to date white girls.
yeah, he has, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So, like,
but this is a conversation that affects them too, because they're lighter than we thought they would be, and that is a real thing, because the color and the tone of your skin affects how people treat you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly tell the story of how how Uncle Sasa, when I came.
Go ahead. So you're in the hospital.
I'm in the hospital,
and this is your first baby. You just given birth, and your family comes in to visit, and one of our favorite uncles,
one of my favorite uncles, comes in, and because he's such a Samoan, you know, like he's such a Samoan. Anyway, he comes in and he sees the baby, and he's like, ooh.
And we were all expecting the babies to be much darker than they are.
But I think him in his mind, because he sees you as like a black man.
Yeah.
When he comes, he was expecting a dark baby.
Uh-huh.
So he comes in and he sees this light skinned ass, this like effectively white baby, and he's like, "Ooh, apalangi," and I was like, "Okay, uncle." But this is the same uncle that was like, when he met my husband, he
still to this day thinks I'm from South Africa.
Yeah, because he doesn't know that black people outside of South Africa exist. Like, he only sees black people on TV
and doesn't know like the breakdowns of me genetically, or just and that's something that I've dealt with for years too, because for a lot of people it doesn't matter what I'm mixed with, what other races I am. I'm black because they see, that's all I am, and so all the rest of me is erased in that equation.
But it's really interesting because he only knows black people from, like, the Springbok team, so the rugby league, the South African rugby team, rugby union team. That's literally his whole perception of black people. He only knows that they. Because, you know, there's not many black people that come on TV here in New Zealand.
Yeah, no, and I listen, it only happened once in Tonga, but I've even had that experience once in Tonga where somebody was like, "Are you from Africa?" And I was like, and everybody else was angry as shit at them for asking me that question, and they were like, "What a stupid question." And I was like, "Nah, chill, I'm not upset." But, like, so it does.
But one of the things that will always stick in my mind is how you literally had told him you're not from South Africa, and he was like, "Oh, okay. I had South African sausage.
Yeah, like,
have you had that before?" And I'm like thinking, like, he just said he's not from fucking South Africa.
But so this conversation is a lot about the way we interact, the way people interact with us, and how these things form, you know. And so we don't even realize sometimes that it is internalized racism or self-hate, because it doesn't feel like that. It's just, I don't like these things.
Yeah.
These things don't appeal to me. Why does that make me racist? Why is this internalized racism? So as always, let's kind of break down what internalized racism is. So we have kind of talked about this a little bit when we addressed the diaspora and somewhat in other episodes. But what internalized racism is and how it happens, it's basically having a negative, harmful, or toxic view of yourself, of your people, and looking down on you or them for not being white, or not being European, or not leaning in to colonization and assimilation.
But it's really interesting when I see a lot of people who, like, when they speak, and not a negative view on themselves personally,
but the people around
them. So they
them
feel like they themselves are above.
Yeah. So even sometimes their own family members. So just to take it back, so the way we broke this down originally when we talked diaspora is, it is very easy to become a product of assimilation and internalized racism, because it's the structure of our society and colonization. Something Malcolm X said that we talk about, and I say all the time, is you will be a fool to let your enemies teach your children. And this is part of why, because when we go to school, right, if you go to good schools, you have white teachers, and they teach white history.
Yeah.
And you learn how your people were savages and how white people are the heroes and the saviors. And then you go to church and you worship a white Jesus of Nazareth and a white God. And so, and you look on TV and all the movie stars and the major actors are white. And we grow up in these lives that personify European beauty and white features and whiteness. And even in our own cultures, we have so many mixed people from colonization, and then the lighter people start getting treated better because they're closer to the whiteness. And if you're going to mix, then you at least want your kids to be, you know. And so we're not even as dark as we used to be as a people, and we shame ourselves for being that dark. And so it's very easy
to exist in that environment
and to grow into the mindset of, well, why wouldn't I want to aspire towards whiteness? Why wouldn't I want to have a better income and speak better? And you know what I mean? And you begin to separate yourself and be separated from your people. And so this happens a lot this happens a lot to first generation kids whose parents are from a different place, and then they migrate, and then they grow up in Australia or New Zealand or America, and they have no connection. This happens a lot to even people who, especially people who work in the system and work for the government a lot, because you become a manager of your people. And if you work in the government sector and you work around low income areas and everybody is people of color, you start to look down on people of color. And this has been talked about on Twitter a ton, how people at the WINS office act like it's their money. You know what I mean? And the way people who work for the government talk about POC. Another time that we saw this was the Orangatamariki, when they were showing all the uplifting. And the family members and a lot of the workers, a lot of their comments were in that, well, you don't know how these people live and all the help that they do and how good all the time. Because when you work in the system, again, it's very easy to start looking down on people and feeling above them.
It's really interesting because when I first saw when the story broke about them trying to uplift that, I'm not sure how many people who are listening are aware of the story. It was, this young Māori woman, Oranga Tamariki, had come to the hospital, like a social worker had come to the hospital where she was literally just finished giving birth. She's in recovery, she's holding her baby, and they had an order to uplift the baby. Uplift in the sense to take the baby. It's really interesting because when I first heard of the story and watched the video that had come out, because I only follow like people with the same kind of views as me, because it's just so tiring otherwise battling and combating people constantly. So everyone that I pretty much followed was saying the same thing, and just how horrible it is, and how this is not like an isolated case. All of these things
happen pretty
frequently. And these are things that Māori women and families have been saying for a really long time. So like that, and I was of the same view. And then when I met with, people outside of, like my family members and stuff who work within they don't work with Oranga Tamariki, but they work in the system, in the culture, in social development sectors within the government, and just how opposite their view was from what I normally, it was a shock to you. Yeah, it was such a shock. They were like, how horrible, that thing was. I guess confronting, I don't know, like, people who have been in the system for a long time get biased views. They get desensitized. Yeah. And so I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this woman is about to lose her baby, and this is what you have to say about it? Like, it's
so we'll come back together. First, not to take away from the seriousness of what we're talking about, but I owe this just to toss it back to your gangster cookie this morning. So just for you, I want to throw up some gunshots, okay? Okay? Gunshots for the gangster cookie, okay? Alright, so just to get that out there and celebrate it. But, no. Okay, coming back in. So, it's very easy to get desensitized working in the system.
Yeah.
And it's just like being a teacher. Anything in low income is rough.
Mm-hmm.
Because you deal with POC, and you, even when they're your people, you forget. You know, that this is a systemic issue.
Yeah.
You know? And so, again, I'm going to take this back, and I'm going to come back to the core of this. So there's this video that I've mentioned before, and I've searched for it for so long, and it makes my Google searches very awkward. But I saw it when we used to be active on Tumblr. And what it was a dinner party, and there was a lot of aristocratic or very well-off white people, mm-hmm. and they were talking about the assimilation and elevation of the Negro. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the issue of the Negro and their increased numbers. And one person was saying, you have to keep them in their place, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, then they become too hard to manage. And the other person was of the opposing view, and he said, listen, you have to separate and cultivate the talented and intelligent among the Negro. You have to give them things and inspire them to achieve towards whiteness. When you do that, not only do you make them more palatable to us, but you separate them from their own people, because they are no longer acceptable to their people, and they no longer find their people acceptable. Cultivating them for us and giving their best of their people to us, and we don't even have to do the work anymore. They become managers of their people for us. And the prime example of this, and they've been doing this since slavery with, Django Unchained, mm-hmm. the house nigga, Steven. Steven loved, Miss Your Candy. So much that he managed and broke down all the other slaves. So this is not something new. This is the separation of our people and taking life.
What's his name? The guy, the sheriff.
So something I showed my wife recently, because we do a lot of black classic movies.
Yeah.
We watched Life, which is a prison movie featuring Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy.
Uh-huh.
And to manage the
very good movie.
Very good movie. And to manage the prisoners, they had one of the prisoners.
Yeah,
and he was a tool. He was an extension mm-hmm. of the white overseer. And so he had power and authority through that man, and it separated him from the rest of the prisoners, and he, and so this still happens today. It may not be in a slave capacity, it may not always be in a prison capacity, but again, the government sector. Yeah. You're a manager of your people for who?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we look at diversity and inclusion as important for us, so that we have people that understand our needs and our issues, but it's also important for them so that they have people to manage who they don't understand, so that they don't have problems. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And once you properly assimilate into the system, then you're acting on... Yeah. Listen, again, and it comes back to that comment about WINS workers acting like it's their money. They're harsher than the people that govern WINS sometimes, because they're overseers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're not going to cheat my system. you know what I... Yeah. But, and it's the reality.
Well, one thing I did want to say in this sense of being closer to whiteness, mm-hmm. the reason why I was listening to this really good podcast. Well, I listened to one episode. She's a black woman, a black Samoan woman, Afro-Tene. You guys need to listen to her podcast. Mm-hmm. And she gave a really good breakdown of why, where the anti-blackness within Pacifica, but mainly the Samoan community kind of stemmed from. And it was a really good breakdown of it, and it kind of just in summary, it was kind of we were ruled under Germany, right? Mm-hmm. And we were treated well under them. Mm-hmm. But then the British came, kicked Germany out, and then mm-hmm. we were ruled under the British, and we weren't being ruled so well under them.
Right.
So we kind of wanted the Germans back.
Right.
So there was this they created this Nazi party within...
Yes. And we've seen the photos.
Yeah, within Samoa, and like, the Samoans were in the Nazi party going to the meetings and stuff like that. And
because they wanted Germany back. Because we know very well who the English are and what they do and what they've always done. So
yeah, so we wanted Germany back. But the thing with the Nazi party was they kind of like the whole Aryan race, the whiteness kind of
thing. The purity. The blonde hair, blue eyes.
So they kind of made it palatable to us, kind of like in the sense that, oh no, you guys are closer to whiteness. You guys, you guys are a bit light skinned.
This goes all the way.
That's where she feels
it came from. But that conversation even goes all the way back to the origin of Baloney. And what it means, and the elevation, and the highness, and the quality of the word, regardless of the instance that we've come to use it in. But just to make it personal and stop talking about theoreticals, I'll give you guys, what it was for me. The way it happened to me was the same way it happens to a lot of us. My parents wanted better for me than they had. And so we moved to a little Polish town.
Which is reasonable.
Right. We moved to a little Polish town. And there were no other people of color, maybe one or two when we moved there. And so when I went to school, all of my friends were white. And all of my teachers were white. And no one ever treated me any differently. I never experienced racism in my early childhood. And so I didn't know that I wasn't white. I really sincerely didn't. And I did know that I was very different from my parents because I had a different upbringing and I didn't come from what they came from. And there was a lot of things that they couldn't understand and identify with me on. And so at a challenging time in my life, all of my love, all of my affection came from white people. And that was where all of that kindness in my life made me love. James Baldwin said it. We watched together I Am Not Your Negro, right?
Yeah.
And James Baldwin said the thing that kept him from ever truly hating all white people
was
that one of his teachers, one of his earliest teachers who truly showed him love and kindness was a white woman. And so even as much as James Baldwin was a voice for the American Negro, he could never fully condemn all white people because in his youth, at his earliest point, this white woman got him and gave him love and affection.
Yeah, it's rough.
And that it was the same for me, And so for a long time, it did go because I was very well educated and my family was very, we never were on the dole or anything like that. And so and whenever we would go and visit my cousins, it was always shitty for me.
Yeah.
Because they hated the way I talked and I was to this and to that.
Yes.
And so all of my negative experiences came from people of color because I wasn't like them, and all of my positive experiences came from white people. And that, in my earliest stages, developed who I was for a long time. And even, I've told this story before and I've talked about this, so I didn't understand racism until I got around people of color, and it was people of color against other people of color for being the wrong type of person of color.
Yeah, it's a bit rough.
Like, you the wrong type, we're both Spanish, but you're the wrong type of Spanish.
Oh my god, what is it?
Everyone
at the top is...
So we watched a lot of films together, but another movie that we watched was Live by Night.
Yeah.
And he got to Cuba, and the guy was explaining to him, not Cuba, he got to Florida, and the guy was explaining the hierarchy. And it was like the Cubans sit at the top.
Yeah.
And then underneath the Cubans is the Puerto Ricans. And then
but
everybody shits on the Dominicans because the Dominicans are the dark ones. But it was exactly that type of setup. And so I understand how easy it is
you even see that in Pacifica culture.
Especially, you do.
Like,
we have this debate all the time, and the arguments all the time with Hawaii versus this, and New Zealand versus Australia, and American polys versus everybody else, and the ones in Samoa. It's all a product of these things, of this conversation. Go ahead, you were saying no? Like,
no, it should, growing up, I feel like everyone has had, like, everyone who grew up within the diaspora, everyone whose parents, you know, are we're first generation kind of thing, have had that kind of internalized racism at one point. And very strongly so for me in high school. So
technically you didn't have a reason to look down on me. Not judge. I'm sorry. I can't toss that out there. Okay.
You know, even for me, I just... Shut up. Listen, you know, I'll be candid, you're right, I shouldn't have judged you, because even for me, growing up in high school, okay, shut up,
I didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing.
Facials, okay, in high school, like, I grew up in Australia, and even, like, at a private Catholic school in Australia, so there was only a select number of brown people there, so I knew I was Samoan, and we had Samoan stuff within the school and things like that, but then I moved to South Auckland, and this, you know,
culture shock. Shots fired.
I had never, and I moved to South Auckland for my last year of school. Everyone there, not a single white person, everyone there is, you know, and I didn't realize that there were other Highlanders that weren't just Samoans, because I only grew up with Samoans, so I thought everyone was Samoan. So I come here, and there's Tongans, there's Fijians, everyone is brown. And I'm like, holy shit. And people are like, the way I talk was a bit weird to them. Not my accent. It wasn't my accent. It was... just
like your speech patterns and your mannerisms. And this... I think the roughest age of transition, and the point that this happens to so many of us, is during school years.
It is.
Because I know so many other Tongans that are ashamed of gold and don't like gold teeth because of how it's viewed and how it's looked down on, and so much shame in and of our culture. You know what I mean? So it is that point. It is those years.
It is those high school years. I remember I think I was year 8, and I'm really ashamed of this. I used to think so horribly of the Indigenous people of Australia. Not really horribly in the sense, but because everything you see on the news and everything of the portrayal of them is they're drunks, they live off the system.
Exactly. That's the systemic image that's been created around Aboriginals.
They go to school for free. And as someone who was
the same
struggling,
way they treat and talk about them all the years.
As someone who is who's raised by a single mom, who and you're looking at them wondering well, if you're getting all these handouts, what's the issue? But it wasn't until got a little older and got a little bit more educated that I was oh no, this
I get it now.
This is it.
I had to have this debate with someone I really cared about and respected, who we were friends in Australia, because, listen, first it was rough for me because he was Lebo, or Lebanese, and the colonization and the mass immigration of the Lebanese people to Australia is a completely different conversation. But to be an immigrant and to hate Indigenous people is an issue, and he had a lot of the same views. And to be in college and still that they live off the system and they get all of these handouts, and I was like, bro, how are you this age and you believe those things?
And it's really it hurts me now that I think, but these were things that I used to believe, because I don't want my kids to be learning experiences for other people,
which is why we believe in homeschool, so we can skip these patterns.
So it feels when I look back on it, I'm it's really sad and horrible that and even to this day, black people, brown people, they're learning experiences for a lot of white people and even our own people, and it shouldn't be that way. They shouldn't have to take on the emotional labor of your ignorance kind of thing.
Yeah, essentially. to move and progress forward, I think we all have a pretty good idea and understanding. But the reason that this topic became such a hot point for me and such a necessity is because politics are very big in conversation. And no matter where you live in the world, we all get very much affected by American politics. And I hate to say it, but American polys have made this a talking point for me. Not to slander anyone, because a lot of our American polys are Mormon. And as a Mormon, you are very much subject to internalized racism.
Yeah.
Because that's very... it's in the Mormon portion of the Bible what a sin it is to have dark skin. And redaction does not change that. And the views of Brigham Young, one of the main founders, and all the things that he taught and believed in, a lot of the things that are still very much a part of that culture. And so a lot of Mormon polys supported Mitt Romney. A lot of them support Trump. And we're having this conversation increasing of late of them feeling attacked and saying, oh, it's wrong to treat people this way because of their views, and how dare you look down on people and you think you're better but you're treating people this way. And this is a lot of the same conversation that happened around Israel Folau and all of the hatefulness that he was speaking. And the problem is, one, these views are partially the product of internalized racism and self-hate. And because people don't understand that, they don't realize the way that a lot of these views are attacks on their own people and themselves. Because if you want, you can look at the Trump rally and you can look at the black supporters, and if you're not wearing a MAGA hat, they don't know that you're with them. So you're just another nigger. And so they're treating you like they treat everyone else. Okay? And so all of your internalized racist views and the hate that you feel from your own people won't stop the cops from beating the shit out of you when you get pulled over on the highway. It won't...
To quote James Baldwin, he said, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression."
Okay, exactly. And that's the root of the conversation that we're having right now. Because it's not just political views, and it's not just an opinion. When the things that you say and you speak on and you promote empower people to oppress other people, or when they put people's lives at risk, which anti-gay and anti-LGBTQ conversation does, because people still very, very much realistically die and are killed for being, homosexual. It's an issue. When your views have the potential to cost other people their lives and take away their rights, it's a problem. And ignorance is a privilege. And us holding on to ignorance on these topics does nothing but hurt us as a people. They hurt our allies, and it really sets us back because we destroy ourselves from within. And that's what makes internalized racism and self-hate so dangerous.
So just to go back, because I realized we glossed over the topic.
Go ahead.
But I do want to touch on Pacifica men
of color, period, choosing white women.
Yeah. And I feel like because you kind of have insight in this, maybe you could provide
I can speak to it.
Yeah.
So I know it's an issue for you and for many other women of color in Pacifica. So for me, the reason it's an issue is because, and I've had this conversation a lot with other men of color, the need of men of color to tear down women of color when they choose white women. But after I started to progress and grow past my old views and the things, I had this conversation with a brother I respected, and I said to him, Troy, how do you feel about interracial dating? And he said, I don't have a problem with interracial dating if you really have feelings for someone or you love them and you think they're dope. That's completely fine. But if you want to be with other people or other races because you look down on your own race,
then that's the issue.
That's an issue. That's an issue. And that's what it stems from. And a lot of men will deny it because men are naturally liars. As a man, I can say that. A lot of men will deny it. But men of color aspire towards white women for a lot of reasons. One, because they feel like it's an elevation or a status symbol for themselves. Two, Because
gunshot.
oh, okay, no, we'll do it. Okay, they feel as though it's an elevation or a status symbol for themselves to be with a white woman, right? But then, two, the part that's really toxic and very dangerous is children. Because a lot of men view light skin and whiteness and European features as attractive. And so they want their children and their daughters and their sons to have these light features.
Yeah.
They want their sons to be dark like them, and they want their daughters to be light and
it's not
white.
even, specific to black men or Pacifica men. Like the whole video of that woman, the black woman, and she was upset. Like, she had married a black man. Well, she had a baby with a black, but she was upset that her baby didn't have her eyes.
No, but they were light skinned. That's different.
Okay.
But they could, and it was. But yeah, even still, she was light skinned, and she still had the internalized racism because her baby had brown eyes instead of blue
her
eyes.
colored eyes.
And she was like, "I wanted you to have pretty blue eyes like me." So even then, fresh out of the womb, she already had less love for her child.
Yeah.
Because her child had.
And how do you grow up like that with a child? Like, how do you, as a child, grow up
with parents that love you less because you don't share the whiteness?
You become that child that child is like, can you pick the doll? The black child.
Yeah, which doll is ugly? Which doll is pretty?
And she picked.
Well, I'll come back to that. But another reason that men of color choose white women is because white women are seen and portrayed as being soft and more manageable and more feminine and easier to deal with. They'll stress you less. They meet their needs more. They're portrayed as being more appealing, but I can tell you firsthand, it's just a different type of stress, because motherfucker, I hate tears. But anyway, but these are the things that are fed to us, and these are the things that, oh bro, listen, you want an easy time, you want a woman that'll take care of you, get you a white woman. And these beliefs are collectively shared until it becomes women of color are seen as difficult. Me and my boy, we had the conversation. Danny, I love Danny to death. That's my guy right there. We had the conversation about Cardi B as the prime example of how Cardi is so loud and she's so extra, and who the fuck wants to be around that in public, and that shit is embarrassing, and it don't matter how sexy you are, because you know what I mean. And so it's treated and seen as the more palatable option because women of color are demonized as being loud and difficult and hard to manage.
But it's so hilarious because that same loudness, that same extraness is exactly what white women kind of aspire to now in today's
emulate.
culture.
Shots fired.
And even like gay men, like that's
how they portray themselves as their inner black woman and stuff like that. Yeah,
the whole clapping when they speak, and
the head bobbing and
the period.
Yeah, very much.
And
very
even
true.
I see that in Pacifica culture now too, which is a whole other
conversation which we've had. As listen, I posted the video clip. Everybody want to be a nigga, but don't nobody want to be a nigga. Even on a family level, to take it to a different place, because when mixed race marriages are a thing that's also a part of this, right? Mm-hmm. And a conversation that someone had, I remember, they were saying, my father hated black people with all his heart and soul. And when my mixed race daughter was born, he loved her to death. But it didn't cure his racism. Yeah. It taught my daughter to hate herself and hate other black people because she loved her pop so much, and he loved her so much that he couldn't be wrong, so she had to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And so she hated what he hated because he loved her, and what she hated was herself.
Yeah. It's really... That's a whole other conversation.
But it's a part of this one. Because when the people you love... Because this is a very challenging conversation for Afakasi people like me. Mm-hmm. Because when half of yourself and half of your family and half of the people you love, often who you grow up with, don't love or accept or fuck with the other half of you, how do you learn to love for yourself?
Exactly.
How do you grow up and not hate yourself? How do you grow up and not hate your people?
Yeah. The thing that I was gonna point out was there's that big thing on Twitter right now about how that the black boy was killed by so he was going to his girlfriend's house.
Yes.
And just for people who are not aware, he was off to his girlfriend's house to pick up his girlfriend.
So there was a black young, and this is why. So, just as a footnote, this is why a lot of black people struggle with trusting even other POC.
Yeah.
The young man was black, his girlfriend was Hispanic, and her father was racist, and she brought her boyfriend to her home, and her father killed him and his friend for dating his daughter. He killed the boyfriend and the friend. But this is not a new story. This is something that's been happening for ages as well.
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time, because even back, and I remember this was in like the 90s, and this was in Benson. Emmett Till, true, but this was in Bensonhurst, New York, which is a heavily Italian area, right? Predominantly Italian American, let's say that. And a young woman was dating a black man, and it was her 21st birthday, and she was going to bring her black boyfriend home. And her father told her, you bring that nigga to my house and I'll kill him. And she didn't take him seriously, and she brought her boyfriend to her house, and her father and her brothers beat him to death with baseball bats at her birthday party. And the craziest part about the story is, nobody went to jail. And so that is the point of this conversation. How dangerous internalized racism has the potential to be. Because it literally costs and claims lives.
It does.
Especially, again, when you're someone like Israel Folau with a public platform that can inspire hatred and endanger other people's lives with your hate speech. Or when you are a person of color who supports someone like Trump, who hates your own people because you talk different, or you've got a little bit of money, or a different education, and so you don't feel like one of your people anymore. But the gag is, white people, listen,
so how,
the story of OJ. Jay-Z said it perfect, and you said it the same way we said it before. Rich nigga, poor nigga. It doesn't. Still nigga. And listen. We had it when we had the fob discussion.
Yeah.
Because whether you see yourself as a fob or not, or how educated you are, or how we view ourselves, white people still view us as fobs.
But the thing with that is there's a lot a lot of Pacific Islanders use that to kind of draw likeness to blackness. In the sense that, oh no, I can use the N-word because we're all, white people all look at us the same. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
We were the niggas of our people. But listen, okay, we're not going to get into that now. We'll do that another time. But do you feel there's anything we missed or more that you want to touch on?
Well, I do want to touch on how is it you came to unlearn your internalized racism?
Malcolm X. So, Malcolm X, and I'll tell you sincerely, so if you guys haven't seen the Malcolm X documentary or movie by Spike Lee, it's something I definitely recommend you check out. But this movie, I'll say of all movies I've ever watched, and it's a biopic of his life, has had maybe the greatest impact on me. And I saw it at 4 different phases of life, and it affected me different every time. And I remember one of the youngest impacts it has, it made me feel ashamed. And it made me feel ashamed because I knew that I was kind of living a different life.
Yeah.
But when I got older, the last time that it really hit me and affected me major it was like somebody lifted a veil or a cover off my eyes. And I really started to understand because I'm not to toot my own horn, but because I'm so educated and I have intelligence and things like that, I didn't understand the ignorance of my views and beliefs. And I thought, surely with all of my book learning, I can't be wrong, I must be right. And intelligence is even worse and more dangerous because you can rationalize anything.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand all the ways that I hated myself and my people, and how I had separated myself from them. And so learning about Brother Minister's journey and his transformation, and being taught while he was being taught, fucked me up. And it hurt me in my heart, because I truly came to understand all the things that I was and all the things that I've been made to believe, and the falseness of all of those beliefs. And once I was able to accept them, and the lifetime of harm and hurt and pain and had caused and done to myself and others, I was finally able to grow beyond and transition and move past those things that I believed, and become something different, and devote my life to trying to love and care for and do for my people, to stop the need for there being people like me again, to build schools and homes and educate my people, so that people didn't have to grow up the way I did, being educated and guided by the hand of another to be what they want you to be.
And hopefully this episode will help, people out there who may be struggling a little bit with
that. And that's something that
and I guess it's a lot of about identity as well. It is understanding.
That's something that's the core of my beliefs as well, and that's what Malcolm X taught me. We need our own schools, because a lot of our schools, just like the decile system, is based on income and area, right? And so, if everybody in your area is poor and undereducated and has a low income, so they only let you go to schools that are poor and underfunded. And so you can't get a quality education, you can't go to college, you can't get good jobs. You create another generation of low and so
that's the cycle of poverty.
Right. So why wouldn't I need my own school to give my children a better education to increase their opportunities?
But that comes with its own struggles.
It does.
What's his name? Dr. Omar Johnson.
Yeah, it does. Listen, it comes so
people,
many levels.
Your own people giving you shit for trying to.
But we had this conversation with the banks. How when you try and do businesses, your own people will shoot you down in favor of whiteness and are less apt to believe in you and your ability.
And that will be another episode we cover on Pacifica businesses and ways.
Which would So, but on that note, I think we've hit pretty deep on the topic.
Thank you guys for listening. We hope you
learned some interesting things. We thank you as always for being here with us.
Love to hear what you guys have to say about your own journey.
Yes, for sure. We love. Please hit us up on Twitter. Talk to us. Let us know. You can check out the Facebook. Let us know where you stand on the debate of internalized racism and self-hate, and what your own experiences are, and maybe how you've grown past it, or is it something you still struggle with?
We'll end it off with some shotguns because we're loving this new app.
We are. We're loving the new shotguns. All right, so on that, you know what I mean. I was gonna drop a flex bomb. Okay, but we will see you guys next week, and we will talk to you soon. Be safe, family.
Bye.